speed with this Nigerian Senate concern. The last 2 weeks we've been showing concern too about areas across the country that we feel that, look, if we don't handle the issue of security very well, it's kind of escalating by the day.
Well, there's no lie in that we're having very serious issues. And even the service chiefs, they're speaking to it. They are saying the things that they are doing, and not just doing, but giving us figures in terms of what they are doing. The Chief of Army Staff, General Agbaja, has spoken and said, see, through the Defense Headquarters, the CDS has also spoken, as the Chief of Defense Staff has also spoken, and they've been giving us the battles they've had to fight. And they do that twice weekly. The Chief of Air Staff also spoke and said they were also trying to acquire more platforms to combat crime. But it's unfortunate that things are not working as fast as Nigerians want. For instance, look at the kidnapping that occurred in Ondo State last week, where choir members of a church were going for a program, and 25 of them were kidnapped. Apart from what happened at the church in the Catholic Church in Ondo State, it's been a long time we've had issues like this to contend with. Very, very, very long time in Ondo State. And if that could happen in Ondo State, where we had a feeling that the insecurity had been tackled to an extent, it actually calls for concern. And for me, I would expect the Senate to do more than the talking that has been done. They should also quickly look at the needs of the armed forces of Nigeria to tackle all of these challenges headlong. We should do less of talking now and have more of action. The way the armed forces, or the ways in which they have responded, at least so far, in this regime, that's from May 29 till now, I'm impressed. It's just like we said during the talk on importation of expired products that the customs stopped. These people are also getting more desperate. They are trying to look for new ways of ensuring that they catch our security men unawares. And that is what is happening now. So whichever way the Senate can help, by way of funding, to speed up things happening and doing the oversight function properly, it will go a long way.
So, Babajide, during the last administration, we talked about capacity, we talked about will, and we are looking at the direction of this administration. But I've not seen President Bola Tinubu really talk much. Yes, he's been talking about the specific deterioration of security, how he's going to handle banditry and insurgents in the Northeast. I've not heard much of the specific on direct what they want, what they intend to do to address this. And if we don't have peace across that corridor, there's still going to be a problem.
Well, in his manifesto, he dealt extensively into what he will do, how he will police Nigeria, how will keep our people safer. One of the things that he suggested is, I came up with is the idea of forest rangers. We can't deny the fact that our forests have become good habitation for these criminals. Whether it's in the North Central, where we have the Kanji Lake National Park, is an extensive forest that bandits and terrorists, offshoot of the Shekau faction of Boko Haram, have turned to their home. You know, the fact that we left Sambisa too is a forest reserve that we left unattended for so long until bandits decided to take it over, you know? So it became a problem. You go to Zamfara, in Maru local government, for example, we have forests, extensive forests. Some of these local governments are even bigger than some states.
Some states, yeah.
You know?
Bigger.
So those forests are there. Look at Dansadao Forest, for example. It's a breeding ground. It's a training ground for terrorists. And some of the most dangerous terrorists that we've had, including their late leader, Buhari Ndaji, who was pictured in a photograph, who was pictured with former governor of Katsina, Governor Masari. That's the forest where he eventually lost his life to Dogo Gide. So those forests, we need to do something about those forests. Ashwaju talked about recruiting and arming forest rangers. Because, look, I believe the forest rangers can work. Because you look at, in Borno State, they use agro rangers. They call them agro rangers. They provide security for farmers. I was in Mafa local government, and on the way to Mafa local government from Maiduguri, both sides of the road, you see farmers engaging in farming. And these these agro rangers provide security for them. Some of the agro rangers are repentant Boko Haram fighters, you know. You see them armed with their pump action and other light weapons, providing support for these people. So that key element in Ashwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu's manifesto, we want to see it implemented. We want to see it implemented because if we look, there are so many young people. If we will give them training, they are ready to volunteer to protect their country. When you go to Katsina today, the state government has come up with this idea of training thousands of young men, and they were actually trained by the police, who will come and work as vigilantes, you know, and protect the frontline local governments. There are at least 12 to 13 local governments where bandits are giving our people issues in Zamfara, in Katsina State. So the governor, I think the kickoff of the thing is actually on Tuesday. So the governor has come up with the idea, believing that if they can post them, at least every local government will have like 100 of those boys. Post them to their local governments. They will secure those local governments. They will be able to provide intelligence for our regular security operatives, the armed forces. So I believe that that is the way to go. In Zamfara, Governor Dauda Lawal is trying to replicate what they have done in Borno State that is already successful. The synergy between the young men that you call civilian JTF and the army. I've seen it work. In fact, there's a civilian JTF. They work with the soldiers. They're always by the roadside. The soldiers will take will just be like 20 meters, you know, behind them. They are usually the ones who go to search the vehicles. It is where they raise an alarm, the army will join. And there have been occasions when this same civilian JTF actually went with the army on military operation. So they've been embedded with the armed forces, working with the armed forces to ensure that we secure Borno State better. So in Zamfara, the governor is trying to replicate that. And I can assure you, if they do it properly, if it is not politicized, and if they keep an eye on the traditional rulers in their communities who are working in cahoot with some of these bad people, definitely security will improve. Because right now, I'm sure that if you ask Governor Dauda Lawal something that bothers him extensively, it is this issue of security in Zamfara, because it is now a lot worse than when he first got into office. Especially the targeting of young girls, university students, and all that. It constitutes bad press, and they know what they are doing. They can easily kidnap commuters. They can easily kidnap bus passengers and all that. But they target students because they know that the moment the newspapers splash it, 15 students of university or 15 core members, the government will step in, and government will probably want to play ball by giving them ransom. So they know what they are doing when they attack these people. We have to protect our communities better. And the structures have to be top-notch. That is, if you want to try community policing or even state police, let's do it. We just have to protect our people better. Right now, we are not doing well. And Ashwaju needs to, yes, he appears more focused with the economy.
Yeah, which is...
Yes, but the president must realize that if our security continue to degenerate, it will also hamper economic growth.
Foreign investors and won't want to come. Okay, I have Femi Lawson on Zoom joining us. Thank you for joining us, Femi.
Afternoon.
We've seen the escalating violence across the country, and banditry, kidnapping, and other crimes. And the Senate has raised alarm over the worsening state of insecurity in the country and demanded for special military operation. Do you agree with the Nigerian Senate?
Well, I think what the Senate is asking from the service chiefs is not new. Previous National Assembly did the same. But I think as a country now, particularly as a challenge to the new administration, we must begin to look at, employing other approaches in the war against insurgency in Nigeria. What we ordinarily termed as banditry in the Northwest is gradually becoming full-blown terrorism. And if you look at what the country has invested in terms of human resources, finance, between the last 8 years, from about 400 and something billion defense budget in 2015 to about 1.5 trillion in 2023. You come to realize that this war is beginning to move from the level of the physical to, of course, the application of more, approach that is beyond the use of military hardware, the recruitment of more military arms, the engagement of civilian JTFs, vigilante, whatever. I think what the situation should focus on now is not just to summon service chiefs and begin to declare emergency or special operations. And we must begin to look at, how we can invest more on intelligence approach to this war. It has gotten to a stage where intelligence gathering.
Femi, are you there? Femi was just criticizing the normal knee-jerk approach that is not a big deal if the Senate is calling for special military operation, but just saying that, look, we've had it in the past.
Yes, he's right on that score. But you know, what is happening in the country is not a conventional war. If it was, you know where your enemy is. Russia wants to fight Ukraine. You know the location of that country. But this is something that happens in a manner you can't even predict. You are clearing people from a particular place. They move to another location, relocate. You know, it's not a conventional war. And that's why, yes, I agree, a lot of intelligence gathering must go on. But sometimes they are also caught unawares, like I said earlier. And we must...
They to do intelligence gathering.
Yes, they to do it. They to do it. And also, especially when you now have even in-house people. You know, it happened a lot of times in Borno when when soldiers were killed in their numbers. It was from inside.
Ambushes.
It was from inside that the enemies got the information.
About troops movement.
Yeah, about troops movement. It was from inside. So that's why I always say people who have been on the field, especially those who even get caught in some of these things, they will appreciate what these men are doing better on the field.
I think Femi is back. Thank you, Femi, for joining us. Femi, continue from where you stopped.
Yeah, so as I was saying, I think
What is it now?
Network has been terrible in the last...
Yes. And people even told me that they were finding it difficult to send money and all that.
Yeah.
So
you have to keep running from one network to the other. So I think we must give kudos to the armed forces of Nigeria. They are doing well. It's just that, like we keep saying, until when a problem is resolved, you can't give a certificate to the students. We want more. And like Wiki said, we also need our governors to rise up to the occasion. Nobody can fault somebody like the Borno State Governor, Babagana Zulu, on his approach. He has been faithful. He has been clear. His intentions are always understood, and the execution near perfect. You can see it. So if we have governors who don't play politics, who will not play politics, yes, we won't even have any problem about saying everybody go and start your own state police. We won't have that issue. But the fear is always
the abuse. That's the thing. And you know, if you remember what happened during the First Republic, especially in northern Nigeria, you understand why people are afraid of state police. But we cannot achieve much with this centralized policing system. Maybe community policing can work if it is well organized. We've seen Amotekun work, for example. When you look at the example of Ondo State, you can't tell me that Amotekun is not a success story. It's a success story. People are even suggesting, during the NBA conference, during one of their main sessions that I moderated, the Amotekun commander got a standing ovation because of the success of Amotekun. The success even permitted to increase in internally generated revenue. Because when people are not in IDP camps, when people can engage in production on a bigger scale than before, government too will earn money. It's as simple as that. In places where people are now in IDP camps, production will fall.
How do you think? How do you get tax?
Look at Benue State, for example. They have more than 9 IDP camps now. More than 9. Some of them are not government funded or government run, but the IDP camps.
Most of
criminal headers have displaced people from their homes. People have fled their homes.
Wow.
Now, the people who have fled their homes, can they be involved in any form of production? They can't be. So that's why we must secure our country, because if we fail to do that, even the economic prosperity that we are looking for, we will not achieve it. I can understand why they are calling for a special military operation, because I have also repeatedly said, look, let's have a military operation in those notorious states. The good thing is that those notorious states, or those states that the bandits have made notorious, they are contiguous in nature. You can move, and they too, that's how they move. They move on their bikes from Niger State, they can end up in Kebbi.
As far as Kebbi.
That's what the people, those children that they kidnapped in Kebbi, they took them to Niger. Yes. You know, all of those states right up to Niger, they used to be one state, northwestern states. Very big state at that time. You know, terminating in Kebbi at the other end. You can imagine.
Towards the boundary.
Yes.
With another,
so
another
the states link one another. So if we launch a military, if we carry out a military operation, for example, we can block their entry points, attack their major, what is it called, major bases,
camps.
Major camps. Using bases, I know they are not soldiers. Their major camps, block. Because usually what we do, we announce that, oh, we are going to launch this. Those ones who are in Zamfara, they will run into Kaduna. Yes. You know, they will run into Kaduna. If you say you are going there to Niger, oh, you want to attack Dogogide in Niger, the next thing is in Kaduna. Because those, yes. Or end up in Kebbi. He moved all the way from Niger to go and kidnap those school girls in Kebbi. So we can launch that operation, but I know that it's very expensive.
Extremely.
Do you know how many bombs we are going to throw during that period? You know how many armored tanks will be involved? They will be fueling. It's expensive. So maybe that's why they are reluctant to do it. But
okay, Femi is back. Thank you, Femi.
Yeah, thank you. So I want to say that as fashionable as the combat approach to this war may look, I would want to encourage the new administration that while the combat approach is being employed on one hand, we must take very serious interest in the financing of the activities of these terrorist groups. The truth is that if you look at how much Nigeria has invested in the combat approach to this war, you know, the number of personnel, the number of hardware, the number of time and resources that have been spent in combating these terrorists called bandits all over the country, you realize that they look like a structure that is becoming more emboldened, more empowered, and more sophisticated. And that tells you that we are not doing enough to trace the source of funding of these organizations. For an organization that parade military-grade weapons, that have such large number of armies, that can confront our soldiers and lay ambush on various occasions, it tells you that it has a very strong financial base. And that is why the administration must look at how our national security architecture can sit back, get people from the intelligence community to begin to look at how are these terrorists able to fund their activities to the extent that they can move on the fringes of the states that, like said by Mr. Bajide, to the extent that they can have, rockets, grenades, to the extent that they have such military-grade weapons to confront our military. I think if we are able to track the sources of the finances of this terrorist group, we'll be having a major headway in tackling this insurgency. Because when you don't...
Femi, what's your approach to... There are people who say that government, every time they kidnap students or high-profile Nigerians, they get paid heavily. There are those who are saying that, look, government should stop getting involved with paying ransom to these people. You know? Do you agree that government should... You agree that government should never get involved in ransom payment? Government should not make funds available for that?
On a number of occasions, you will realize that it has usually been relatives, of some of these victims that have been responsible for payment of this ransom. At some point, government gets involved. But if you look at how sophisticated these groups have become, you realize that their source of funding is beyond those taxes, extortions, or payments gotten from ransoms from people that are kidnapped. These people have external sources of funding. If you look at the funding of Boko Haram for about 5 years between 2016 and 2021, spending over $70 million, I don't think there is a way that Boko Haram would have made such amount of money by taxing farmers in the Northeast, by extorting people, or by taking money from kidnap. So we must be interested as a country in tracing the key sources of the finance of these terrorists, these bandits who are now holding. And a lot of times these have been traced to the activities of illegal miners in Zamfara and some other parts of the country along that side, where illegal miners are empowering these bandits, these criminals, to buy military-grade weapons so that they can protect their illegal mining businesses while disorganizing the state. So I think these are areas that the government must begin to look at. While we are doing the physical combat, we must begin to look at what is really giving this group the kind of strength, the kind of courage, the capacity to mobilize such number of armies. We've seen visuals of these terrorists moving in hundreds within the same country. And it takes a lot of money to sustain such army of volunteers carrying military-grade weapons, some of them getting all sort of payment for their activity.
Okay, what do you think we can do about our borders? Because they get a lot of their weapons on the black markets across the border, in Libya, Chad.
Well, it has been said oftentimes that Nigeria has one of the most porous border lines, particularly in this region. The previous governments in the country have placed less emphasis on national security along the line of our borders. A lot of times you see government concentrating its focus on the seaport, on the airport, while trying to track insurgents, trying to track terrorist suspects and the likes. While we leave our borders so porous and, of course, unguarded, I think there must be deliberate policies of government, not just to secure our identified borders, but those that have been termed as illegal routes into the country, which are in their own, in their tens and hundreds in some cases, along the north, in some part of the south, along the northeast. The Ministry of Interior must be incorporated into the national security architecture so that the immigration authorities, we work with other internal security organizations to ensure that we increase our border security capacity. As much as we are trying to protect internally, we must begin to safeguard the country against external incursions, especially from those areas where it has been identified that these military terrorist groups get the sources of their weapons from into the country through. So there must be a deliberate border monitoring policy that will go beyond the identified land borders of the country to policing and, if possible, securing some of those illegal entry points into Nigeria, which are in their numbers, that any country cannot just afford to live unguarded.
The ECOWAS wants to see unimpeded trade between its member nations, but there are so many illegal aliens in our countries, like we are so wide open to all comers. What can we do about illegal aliens who walk freely into our country, the way our own people cannot walk into our neighbors?
It's a big failure, and it's among the failures of the past, which I hope that we must take seriously. In actual fact, it is practically impossible for you as a Nigerian to sell ordinary sachet water on the streets of Ghana without having business permit or resident permit. It is always easy for the authorities in Ghana and Togo to identify foreigners and get resident permits, get trade permit. But it is only in Nigeria that people even identify themselves as foreigners and they live illegally in your neighborhood. They do businesses illegally in your neighborhood, and the state institutions do not take any serious interest in them. And that is why today we have an infiltration of people who are not even from the ECOWAS sub-region. But even from Central Africa, another part of Africa, illegally infiltrating the country, doing businesses, resident in the country, because our internal security policies is not serious enough to checkmate the activities of people who intrude into the country illegally under the guise of allowing the freedom, the movement of trade and personnel, and of course individuals under the guise of the ECOWAS protocol. Nigeria must take seriously now the censorship of people who come into our country. And these people are not ghosts. They are in your various communities in Lagos. They are in various communities all across the country.
Riding Okada.
Everywhere.
Yes.
Before I allow you go, Femi, it's like a booming industry now. You just see young men in their teenagers taking up arms, going into banditry. Apart from the security aspect, apart from deployment of military, what other thing can we use to stop this social menace?
Well, it will because a lot of time people shout about the federal government, federal government, federal government. The truth is that we have a large population of unemployed youth. We have a large population of children out of school. And if you look at the contribution of the various level of government, the local government to the state government, to this in menace, you realize that a lot of times we have allowed the states, the local government, to get away with their irresponsibility while we keep calling on the federal government and imposing responsibility on the federal government. To reduce the youth, to reduce the population of our unemployed youth across the country, every level of government must get involved. In the area of job, when you look at job creation, youth empowerment, it has always been federal government from empower to you win. To what are the policies being put in place by the local government? What are the states doing to employ or to engage this teeming population of unemployed youth? Because if we continue to wait on Abuja to get these young people off the street, we'll continue to have more young people who are helpless, restless, unemployed, taking up arms, taking up illegal, occupations across various communities in Nigeria. And on the long run, the federal government will have a responsibility of spending money to secure the country, being the authority in charge of internal security and defense. So we must begin to encourage government at other levels to prioritize youth engagement, youth employment and empowerment. We should stop looking at Empower and all those policies of federal government that will engage youth at local levels. We must begin to task authorities at various levels to be involved in the need for job creation, young people's empowerment, and most importantly, education of our young people.
I want to thank you, Femi Lawson. Femi Lawson, human rights activist. Thank you for your
My pleasure, sir.
analysis. Back to the studio here. And finally, imagine